Hello. I wanted to welcome everybody to the Daniel Financial Group quarterly coaching class. Today's class is called Politics and Your Portfolio. My name is Kevin Daniel, and I'm the president of the Daniel Financial Group. I wanted to welcome everyone on the webinar today. I feel that this is a very important topic. I can't tell you how many times or how many calls that I've received at the office about concerns of the election and how it's going to affect the portfolios. Should we, move out of the market? Should we move back in the market? A lot of, people are really unclear about what they should be doing right now. So I have a wonderful presentation that I'd like to go over with you all and try to keep you all on the right path to your retirement goals and dreams. So without further ado, let's get started. But Washington, D.C. is on every investor's mind these days. It's very common. The same thing happened in 2016, and it seems like it happens every election. Last election in 2016, everyone thought that Hillary was going to win, and the markets moved a little bit one way and then went back up. But a lot of people are just so scared that they're thinking that the market might crash if the person they want elected is not elected. And that is what is on the top of every concerned investor's mind these days. Political uncertainty, ahead of the election, what's going to happen? I mean, you see that in today's, the last few days, the markets have moved quite dramatically. Now, I will say that the only thing that moves markets is information that we don't know. So everything that you are thinking right now is already priced into the market. If the Biden gets elected and the tax rates go up, all that kind of stuff, he's favored to win. So they're kind of pricing him in right now to winning the election. And that's what they do. But there's other concerns that are on investors' minds, but by far and away, political uncertainty is at the top. And that's what we're going to cover today. Who are you going to vote for? I feel it is very important for everybody to get out there and vote. And it is our duty to choose who we think is the best for running our country. Well, are you going to vote for Biden or are you going to vote for Trump? Well, only you know that. But discipline wins every election when it revolves around your investments and your portfolios. You have to be disciplined. You need to have a roadmap to know what to do at all times, in your investment career. So if, for instance, you're not going to retire or need the money that you have invested for 5 or 10 years, well, this is just going to be a little bit of a speed bump, whether the market goes up or down. And you shouldn't really make any drastic changes. Now, on the other hand, if you're pulling money off of your portfolios each and every month, well, you need to make sure you're doing that as efficiently as possible. And you need to make sure that you're pulling money off of your investments, hopefully that aren't going down. So I'm a big fan of the bucket philosophy. Any money that we need in the next couple of years, it's always important to have that in a very low risk portfolio so it's not going down when we're pulling money off. But you have to have discipline in your portfolios and your behavior. Elections, they're like markets. They're unpredictable. And they're far less important to your investing success than you might think. Some people, they like to look at a wait and see philosophy, but that's not a strategy for success. Another thing we're going to go over today is simple strategies for your investing success during election years and beyond. Okay? So what happened in 2016? You know, in 2016, it seemed like every news station across America was saying that it was going to be a landslide, a Democrat landslide. Hillary Clinton was going to win. You know, and there was a couple of groups that, you know, that had it close, but the majority all said that, you know, it was going to be a definite Hillary Clinton win in 2016. But, well, so what happened is the markets, they priced in her winning the day of the election, and the markets fell. Then, well, when they found out Trump won, well, then the markets recovered quickly again. But again, that was information that we didn't know, and that's what moved the markets. So we woke up to all kinds of things, you know, during that 2016 election. We were seeing all kinds of headlines.
Markets responding dramatically, as we've been discussing, to the current lead by Donald Trump in the Electoral College count. I want to bring Bloomberg's Joe Weisenthal and Guy Johnson, along with RBC Capital Markets Chief U.S. Market Strategist Jonathan Golub. Jonathan, we were talking a few moments ago before that news came in from Florida, just about the degree to which the market may have priced in a Hillary Clinton victory. Your reaction to what we've seen so far tonight?
Well, I mean, obviously the news is a shock, and all evening, instead of watching, I mean, obviously I'm watching the electoral map, but I'm watching the, you know, what the market is doing. I'm watching the S&P. I'm watching the Mexican peso, and it's telling me what the odds of a Trump victory is. We put out a note today saying if Trump wins over the next couple of days, it's a 10 to 12% market pullback.
We are closely tracking Wall Street's reaction to Donald Trump winning the White House. Dow Jones futures tense on election night going into Wednesday morning, but then the Dow closed up 250 points yesterday, and today the Dow surged to a new record high at one point, and right now it is currently up over 200 points.
As you can see, you know, only news that we don't know is going to move the market. Now, let's look at how the presidents have fared over time. Do Republicans get better returns? Do Democrats get better returns? Well, let's find out. But if you remember, you know, they got it wrong back in the day as well. They thought Dewey was going to beat Truman. Well, Truman actually won that election as well. But back in 1945 to 1953, Harry S. Truman was our president, and he was a Democratic president. He had 2 economic expansions, 1 recession. His debt to GDP was at 71%, and his returns were quite impressive. His first term went up cumulative 35.1%. In his second term, it was 128%. So the markets fared quite favorable to President Truman. Dwight D. Eisenhower, he had 2 terms as well. He had 2 economic expansions, 3 recessions. His debt to GDP was 54%. And look at his returns. First term, 111%. Second term went up 43%. Now keep in mind, he did all of this, and he had 3 recessions in his presidency. 3. John F. Kennedy, unfortunately, his presidency was cut short. He had 1 expansion, no recessions, and he had a cumulative return of 34.7% in those few years. Then we had Lyndon B. Johnson, another Democrat. His first term returns 65, second term 39%. He didn't have any expansions or recessions. His debt to GDP was at 39%. So there is the returns on President Johnson's watch. Richard Nixon, he had 1 expansion, 2 recessions. He was basically a wash. It went up almost 29%, and it went down basically 29% in his second year. Gerald Ford, 1 expansion, no recessions. Cumulative return went up 50%. Jimmy Carter, 1 expansion, 1 recession, 55.5% cumulative return. Ronald Reagan, Republican, 1 expansion, 1 recession, debt to GDP, 50%. His returns were impressive. First term went up a cumulative 50.5. His second term went up approximately 98%. The returns were very favorable with President Reagan. George H.W. Bush had 1 expansion, 1 recession, cumulative return. President Clinton, no expansions or recessions, but the markets were very favorable, almost 100%. Second term, 83. George W. Bush, well, this was when the market started to pull back. We had the big fall in 2008, but first term went down 6.6, second term 25.8. He had 2 recessions, and that is George W. Bush. President Obama, again in 2016, there were a lot of people that were thinking the markets were going to crash under presidential leadership of Barack Obama. Well, we had 1 expansion. We didn't have any recessions, and the returns were quite good. First term went up almost 45%. Second term, 66.4%. That brings us to President Trump. He had 1 recession, which was the coronavirus, but look how quickly the markets recovered. In fact, his first term cumulative return, 51.5%. So, as you look at all of these presidents, well, they all pretty much are on an upward trajectory. So who are you going to vote for in the election this year? Are you going to vote for Biden? Or are you going to vote for Trump? Well, all I know is that you need to get out there and vote. Well, regardless of whatever president or political party was in office, if you look at the growth of a dollar, if we invested $1 back in 1926, well, it would have grown clear up to $10,000. But if you look at the trajectory of the returns, always up. You just need to be able to weather the little bit of a storm once we come into one. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or it's a Democrat. As you can see, the markets are on an upward trajectory. And then this is a political party. You know, which one? Again, goes up. So, wait and see isn't a strategy for success. You need to have a disciplined game plan. You need to be invested globally, and you need to be very diversified so you don't let every little thing affect you as much as it could. What about I'm just going to wait and see how the election plays out before I do anything? You know, that's what some people do. Does the volatility spike during elections? If I was to ask people on the webinar, I would imagine that most people would say that, yeah, volatility does spike during elections. Well, does it? Let's take a look. Okay, the volatility in the vote. Markets tend to ignore elections. So the S&P annualized volatility from 1964 to 2019 is 15.7%. So that's the volatility over that amount of time. So what would you say that, around the election time? What about before and after elections? You'd probably think the volatility was higher than 15.7, wouldn't you? Well, let's see. Well, 100 days before the election, it's actually 13.8%. And then after, it's the same at 13.8%. So markets tend to ignore the elections, but that's so much easier said than done, because look at all of the negative news. You know, the news is going to make you think like the markets are going to, you know, just blow up if your person doesn't get elected. Americans are hoarding trillions of dollars in cash before president elections. That's what Yahoo Finance put out on September 22nd. Well, this is what happens. There's a lot of people out there that are what I like to call, you know, investors that are trying to time the market. They're active investors. Well, and an active investor, well, let me set this slide up. So when someone's elected, they have 4 years. The first year, well, they generally have things invested about the same. They have much more equities than money market, which is what I like to call the safe side, if you will. And then as we get closer to the election time, well, that starts to actually shift. You know, the equities will actually go down and the money markets go up as we get closer to the election cycle, or to when we are going to vote for the next president. So does that make sense to do? You know, I say no, because they're just simply trying to predict the market. Here we go. Here are 3 hypothetical ways that you can invest your money during an election cycle. This is an analysis of 22 different election cycles since 1932. So let's say that we have 3 different ways that we're going to compare. We have investor strategies. Number 1, well, that investor is just going to, now let me set this back up. This is a person or an investor that is going to invest $10,000 during an election cycle. Well, number 1, that person could be fully invested. And what that means is the investor isn't really concerned about the election uncertainty, and he or she invests the full $10,000 on January 1st of the election year, the first year. Okay, $10,000. On the second strategy, we're going to use consistent contributions. This is similar to what you would do with a 401k plan, but this situation, the investor is going to invest $1,000 in each of the first 10 months of the election year. Okay? Number 3, this is a person that's very nervous, and this is someone that is sitting on the sidelines. So this is an investor that waits until January 1st after the election results to invest that full $10,000. So if we did that on all 3 different strategies, what would returns be if we use those strategies on the last 22 election cycles since 1932? Well, if that person was nervous and sat on the sidelines, that $10,000 would have grown to, well, $14,914. If they would have done consistent contributions, it would have gone from $10,000 to $15,729, which is better. Now, if they weren't worried or concerned about the election uncertainty, and they just invested the full $10,000 on January 1st of the election year, they would have actually come out the best if they would have just stayed fully invested. I imagine that this is probably an eye-opener to people on the webinar. Is it? Well, why is it that everyone likes to make all kinds of crazy changes before the election and all that good stuff? Well, it's very difficult to do because emotion gets into play once the elections come around. you got to be careful and not let your emotions get in the way of your investing success. Simple strategies for investing success during election years and beyond. So let's go over some simple strategies that can help you be successful. Number one, don't try to predict future market outcomes based on current news. I mean, look at 2016. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide, and it didn't happen. Well, a lot of those people that moved to the sidelines and then tried to jump back in the market, well, they lost some returns. So what you need to do is you need to not let emotion get in the way of your investing success. You need to be globally diversified. You need to rebalance either on the quarter or annually. And you also need to be invested in the right risk that for your situation. For instance, if you don't need that money for a good long time, you can actually invest, as long as you're efficiently, you can invest aggressively. Well, if you need that money here in the next 1 to 2 years, that money doesn't need to be invested aggressively at all. Does that make sense? If you have any questions on this, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Number two, don't mix political party preference with the success of your portfolio. So just because the person you want to win the election is not looking like they're going to win, don't let that affect the way you invest your money. Does that make sense? Don't let that emotion get in the way. I mean, I had all kinds of people that were worried if Obama got in office in 2016. Look what happened. You know, a lot of people were worried about Trump getting in office. Well, the markets have gone up, even through the coronavirus. Who would have thought that? Your behavior is more likely to affect your retirement than any election could. So again, don't let that behavior get in the way. Because here's what happens. You know, I kind of relate it, you know, your behavior. It's similar to like a hot stove. You know, your investments, as the investments start going down, human behavior makes us want to pull our hand off of that hot stove. You know, if that market's going down, it's wanting us to pull out of the market. It's just, you know, it's just the way we're programmed. So when we see the market go down, mentally, that makes us want to run from that pain, makes us want to move to cash and that sort of thing. But again, that investor behavior a lot of times is what's hurting our returns. So don't let your behavior get caught up in your retirement and your portfolio. Okay? Discipline wins every election. And discipline also helps you with your retirement goals. So again, get out there and vote. And as I've shown you, evidence shows that you should vote for your candidate with the confidence that your portfolio doesn't care who wins. As long as you have that globally diversified portfolio that's based on your risk tolerance and your time horizon, that means when you need that money, you're going to be okay. So don't make any crazy changes. So I want you to get out there and vote with confidence, and I want you to stay invested with confidence and evidence that I have just shown you. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming and joining the webinar today. I know this is a very important matter. If you have any questions that revolve around your situation, please click the button on this presentation and schedule a little time with me to ask any questions that you may have. So, in conclusion, I want you to get out there and vote, and I want you to stay safe. Until next time, God bless you. Bye-bye.